What you are looking at should not exist. It's the ghost in the machine from a decades-long experiment at Princeton University. A machine built for one purpose: to generate pure mathematical chaos. This machine and dozens like it had no cameras, no microphones, no connection to the outside world, and yet, on one of history's darkest days, it seemed to react to human grief. So, what is this signal? Is it an echo in the machine? The first scientific proof that our minds are connected on a scale we never imagined? That leads to a more dangerous question. If we are all connected by this invisible field, are your thoughts ever truly your own? Is that sudden wave of anxiety, that flash of inspiration, the deeply held belief, is it yours? Or did you just tune into a global broadcast? And that leads to the final terrifying question. If this global consciousness can be measured, who is listening? And what happens when they stop just listening and learn how to broadcast? To find that answer, we have to go back to the beginning, to the man who first heard the signal. His name was Roger Nelson. He was a researcher at Princeton, and he was obsessed with an idea that most of his colleagues considered academic suicide. But why risk an entire career on an idea that's supposed to be impossible? His tool was a machine called a random event generator, or REG. Think of it as a perfect electronic coin flipper. Its only job is to produce pure, unpredictable noise. It has one rule: it can never have a pattern. But what happens when a rule that's baked into physics breaks? Nelson's crime was to network these perfect noisemakers across the globe. He called it the Global Consciousness Project. And for years, there was nothing. Just the noise, the static of a planet, until this. This is the day the rule was broken. Across the planet, Nelson's machines did the one thing they were designed not to do. They stopped being random. For a few hours, they all spoke the same language, not a language of ones and zeros, but of collective shock. Coincidence? Or was the machine listening? Mainstream science pushed back immediately. They argued it was a textbook statistical illusion, data dredging, finding a pattern that only appears meaningful in hindsight. Once stricter controls were applied, the effect all but vanished. For established physics, there was no ghost, there was only noise. But for the researchers behind the project, the official explanation felt incomplete. It couldn't account for other anomalies they were beginning to find, and it connected to a far more radical idea. It happened again after the 2004 tsunami. It happened during globally synchronized meditations. The more the project listened, the clearer the signal became. The ghost in the machine wasn't just whispering, it was starting to shout. For the scientific community, it was an inconvenience to be explained away. For Nelson, it was a truth that couldn't be ignored. The problem wasn't the data. The data was undeniable. The problem was that physics had no explanation for it. The skeptics were right about that. There was no known force, but they were looking in the wrong place. The answer wasn't in global physics, it was in quantum biology. The answer was the quantum soul, a controversial and highly speculative hypothesis suggesting that consciousness itself is a quantum process. To be clear, this idea, known as orchestrated objective reduction, is not accepted by mainstream neuroscience and remains unproven. But for those looking for a single theory to explain a universe of anomalies, it was a tantalizing possibility. The hypothesis proposed that your consciousness is a fragile, coherent state, a flicker of entangled particles inside your neurons, a delicate rhythm that creates your sense of you. But what happens when one rhythm meets another? We call it rapport, chemistry, being on the same wavelength. For all of human history, we've treated this connection as a metaphor. But the data from the Global Consciousness Project suggests it's not a metaphor. It's physics, a literal, measurable field of coherence between minds. But is it always a two-way street, or does one signal eventually become dominant? In a crowd, your individuality can feel like it's dissolving. You feel what others feel, you want what they want. We assume it's social pressure, but what if it's something more fundamental? What if you're not being pressured? What if you're being tuned, your quantum state literally being pulled into alignment with the stronger collective signal? This opens up a terrifying possibility. Your most deeply held beliefs, your sense of right and wrong, your secret hopes and fears. You think you built that fortress yourself. But what if you just downloaded it? A personality packet broadcast by your culture, your society, your media. And in the 21st century, it's no longer a passive process. It's being actively weaponized. They call it memetic warfare. It operates on a similar principle to the fringe quantum theories, a brute force attack on your coherence designed to drown out your individual signal and sync you to a chosen narrative. But the attack isn't on your quantum state, it's on your psychological one. That sudden, searing flash of anger you felt at a headline, that instant certainty about a complex political issue, was it a conclusion you reached through careful thought? Or was it just the echo of a million digital voices, all screaming in unison until you had no choice but to scream along? This is the horror, not of mind control, but of mind weather. You don't feel the coercion. You just feel a change in the emotional climate. And the most disturbing part, you think you came to a conclusion yourself. How would you even know if a thought was not your own? And here we take a deliberate step. We leave the documented science of today and speculate on the trajectory of tomorrow. We ask, if the crude, chaotic, memetic warfare of today could be perfected, what would it look like? The next frontier is to bypass the mind entirely. Not to broadcast a message, but to broadcast a feeling. Not to suggest an idea, but to transmit a state of being. Why spend billions on advertising when you can broadcast desire? Why struggle with political dissent when you can broadcast contentment? This is the ultimate promise of the broadcast, a world without conflict, a world without hate or sadness or messy, inconvenient emotions, a society perfected by engineering the human soul. There's only one problem with this perfect world. It has no room for you. Because that spark inside you, the doubt, the defiance, the part of your quantum state that refuses to sync perfectly, that's not a flaw to be fixed. That's your identity. Erasing the conflict means erasing the self. So the only option left is to fight, to reject the signal, to unplug from the consensus reality and preserve your sense of self at all costs, right? But in a world where shared consciousness is reality, what does it mean to be alone? You don't find freedom. You find decoherence. You become an island of random noise in an ocean of order. Your thoughts, no longer reinforced by the network, lose their structure. You're not a rebel. You're just a ghost, lost in the static. And this is the final perfect trap. The system doesn't hunt down dissenters. It makes the price of dissent. The dissolution of the mind. A choice between two kinds of death, a quiet death as part of the choir, or a screaming death alone in the static. We started by asking if science could find the soul. It turns out, the more we learn how to measure it, the more we learn how to erase it. The greatest horror isn't that our thoughts might not be our own. It's that one day, we might have no choice but to give them away, to choose the clean, silent hum of the broadcast. So when the signal comes for you, offering peace in exchange for your chaos, will you have the strength to choose?